Good morning, councillors, and welcome to the City Planning, Economic Development Environment Committee of the 19th of August. I'll open the meeting at 9 a.m. and I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders past, present and emerging. For the benefit of members of the gallery and for everybody here, the meeting is being audio recorded. I have an apology from Councillor Wilcox and I'd like to move that we accept her apology. Can I please have someone to second that? Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, first up, I'm actually going to shuffle the order of the agenda around a little bit, and I'm going to ask the Director of Innovation City Transformation, Dr. Scott Burke, and the Program Leader for Advocacy, Carmen Panisi, to come up and speak to us about their presentation on the grants funding.
Thank you. So the advocacy program just thought we'd steal a few minutes of your time to provide you with an overview of our grants and subsidies function, as well as what grants funding we've received over the last 2 financial years. So in 2018-19 and 19-20, the organisation has secured approximately 27.8 million through highly competitive funding programs, as well as other partnerships. We've also received 35.7 million through allocative funding programs through the same period. So our grants and subsidies function, led by Natalie Cates in the advocacy program, assists the organisation in keeping tabs on available opportunities and circulating these to the organisation. We provide strategic advice on proposed submissions. We coordinate the submissions through approval processes through council and the application process where there are multiple council branches and directorates involved. And we also work to build key relationships with government departments to ensure that council submits really high quality applications which fulfil the criteria and are as strong as they can be. And we also seek feedback on unsuccessful submissions in order to keep improving going forward. Thank you. So here are some of the figures broken down. As you can see, we've received some really great funding for some great initiatives over the years, including some Logan, which delivered a water safety education program, the Logan Home Wastewater Gasification Facility, which was the first of its kind in Australia, and our Road Smart warning systems, which the RCM branch delivered over 90 signs across the city. You may recognise some of these. These are just some of the more regular competitive and allocative funding programs with the state and federal government. And of late, we've received some increased funding opportunities due to the COVID-19 stimulus, including some funding for KBF, the rail trail, 2 really great projects from EDNS in Beanley and Meadowbrook, which we received an additional 4.4 million through the competitive Unite and Recover Queensland Government program. And thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know.
Councillor Bradley, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to know who actually, you send it off to various departments, but who within the department determines what projects could fulfil those grant applications?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the funding program. It'll be reviewed by, the department officers, and then, sometimes it'll get referred to a minister for final approval, but they'll review it against criteria and then make recommendations.
So is it the managers or is it program leaders or coordinators? Which level of councils?
Do you mean internally within council?
Yeah.
So we circulate them to program leaders, managers, directors, depending on what the program is.
Right, thank you. I suppose the reason I ask, I have circulated an email to all the directors recently, and I haven't received a reply. I'm just wondering why nothing in Springwood has ever been asked for, even though we've got the Springwood implementation plan and funds going to that already. So I was just trying to get to the bottom of who actually determines which projects to apply funding for.
Sorry, if we have multiple branches interested in applying for funding, then we'll usually take that through ELT to provide a recommendation through committee to council to decide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problems.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Lane, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. For your federal government grants, so financial assistance grants, they're given to every council, and the Roads to Recovery, what specifically is advocacy doing to secure grants in those areas?
So the financial assistance grant, that's a allocative funding.
Yes.
So it's not something that we'll go out. So we sort of more provide that input for the competitive funding grants. So where we provide that.
So financial assistance grants isn't something that advocacy goes out and finds money for, nor Roads to Recovery?
Sorry?
The Roads to Recovery as well?
So that's, the financial assistance grants is an allocation that's provided to council. So one of our functions is coordinating the grants register and doing that reporting as well. But yeah, depending on the grant, it will depend on what, how the advocacy program gets involved.
Okay.
But happy to discuss offline further if you have any questions.
Yeah, sure. I was curious because they were up there, and I figured I'd find out what advocacy does in relation to those specific grants. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? No? Do you have any more GB for us, Dr. Scott?
I do not, Mr Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Councillors, do you have any GB for Dr. Scott? Because once he finishes this, I'll let him free from the committee. No? Thank you very much, Doctor, and Carmen, thank you.
Mr Deputy Mayor, Council.
We now have a confidential deputation scheduled in, so I'll move forward to item 6.3, which is in the Health, Environment and Waste Managers reports. And I'll get the staff to bring the Lend-Lease representatives in. Before I move into confidential, do any councillors have a conflict of interest with item 6.3, which is the Lend-Lease Circular Economy Strategy for Yarrabillaba? No? Can I please have someone move us into confidential under Section 751C of the Local Government Regulations? This report is considered confidential due to the confidential attachments, including information that's commercial in confidence. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. Sorry to members of the public, we'll be now moving into confidential, so we'll just ask the gallery to empty and we'll come back out as soon as we can. The recording will now cease until we come out of confidential. The gallery and the public. Councillors, you have a recommendation on the board. Can I please have someone who would like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconded by Councillor Russell. Can you please raise your hands to show your support? That is carried with 8 in favour. Councillor Hall, are you abstaining or against?
I'm against.
Councillor Heremiah?
Against.
Councillor Bannon?
Against.
Who else did I miss? 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's only 11 of us. Thank you very much. That has been carried. Councillors, thank you for your patience with the delegation and the quality of your debate. We will take a quick 5-minute adjournment before we move on to item 6.1, and so that people can stretch their legs and get themselves a coffee. Councillors, as Councillor Hall returns, there's been a change in the regulations and I need to move for an adjournment. The Chair does not have the power to do it on his own, so I moved it. Would someone like to second the adjournment we just had retrospectively? Thank you very much, Councillor Lane. All those in favour, please show your hand. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your indulgence. We'll now move on to item 6.1, which is the 2020-2021 Environment Levy funded projects. I believe we have a conflict of interest from Councillor Bradley on this item.
Which
or are you thinking about 5.1?
Which item are we up to?
6.1.
6.1.
The Environment Levy?
Yes, I do. A perceived conflict of interest. So please bear with me. I can't find the email, so I'm just going to have to wing it. 6.1 is...
Do any other councillors have a conflict of interest? Well,
I have sent it through. So I, Councillor Lisa Bradley, wish to declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to 6.1 of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee due to the following reason. The report refers to Beanley Event Centre, and my partner coordinates Beanley Event Centre. My partner's name is Michael Matthews. I've determined that his personal interest is not of sufficient significance that will lead me to making a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest, and I'll best perform my ability of serving the overall public interest of the whole of the council's area by participating in discussion and voting on this matter.
Cool. It is 6.1? Because we're doing the agenda out of sequence. That's all, Councillor Bradley.
I've got page 148.
133.
My notes.
148 is...
The recommendations on 133, I think.
Okay. Councillor Bradley has declared a perceived conflict of interest. You must now determine whether or not Councillor Bradley has a conflict of interest and determine whether or not she may stay in the room to participate in the debate. Can I please have a mover to determine if Councillor Bradley has a perceived conflict of interest? There being no mover, that is lost. You must now determine if Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest. Would anyone like to move that Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest? There being no mover, that has been lost. You must now determine if Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest and provide your reason. Would someone like to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Is there someone to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Russell. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. Would someone like to provide a reason, or would you like me to provide one for you? I understand that the reason is the nature of the conflict of interest does not cause a benefit nor a detriment to the subjects involved, and this report from memory is a report that we are receiving, so no decision is being made. Thank you, councillors. There being no further conflicts of interest, I will let Michael speak to his report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This report provides details on the projects and activities being funded by the Environment Levy for the 2021 financial year. It was sought by council as part of the budget process. As noted in the report, there's a whole suite of projects and initiatives that align with the Environment Levy policy, which guides the intended use of the Environment Levy funds. I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions on the matter.
Thank you very much, Michael. Councillor Bradley, you have a question?
Thank you very much. On page 138, it refers to Division 1 projects, and I thank you so much for including also the initiative of a project up at Underwood Park Lagoon to look at trying to eradicate the pest fish, the carp. Yes. I was actually at the lagoon yesterday with some park staff, and we saw at least 4 carp in there, and really big carp. So there definitely are them in there. I just want to ask a question though on the Council and Mayor's Resilience Rivers plan, the Priest Gully Rehabilitation Plan. Do you happen to know when that is projected to happen?
I'll hand over to Trevor, Kanapi Program Leader, for answer.
Thank you, through the Chair. That project is put through to the Resilient Rivers Task Force for consideration. We haven't had a commitment that it will go ahead at this stage, and it would form part of the catchment management action plan for that catchment.
Yeah, from memory, when I used to go to the Council and Mayor's meetings for that particular section, it was already on the plan, that particular catchment, that particular project.
Yeah, from memory, Priest Gully has been identified as part of the catchment and part of a potential project location. Yeah. So what we can do is we can go back to Council of Mayors and just check in on the status of their deliberations around the priority projects for this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Any further questions, councillors? Oh, Councillor Stamp, you have a question?
Through the Chair, I just want to make a quick comment if I can. I just wanted to say that I think the community will be very happy to see the great projects that the Environmental Levy is funding, which I think is good to see, and that at some point I'd love to meet to discuss a couple of things that are on the Division 10 listing with a bit more detail if possible, please. I
would trust that you guys will be able to organise that. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions, councillors? If not, Councillor Bannon wants to move the report. Would anyone like to second it? Councillor Karansky, can I please, or move to receive the report, I should say. Can I please see a show of hands? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we have item 6.2, and I'd like to apologise to the gallery as it is confidential, and I suspect, unless I can work a miracle, it'll be a little bit of a wait while you're outside because it's usually got a bit of conversation around it. Item 6.2 is the curbside clean-up service options. Before I move into confidential, would any councillors like to declare a conflict of interest? There being none, I'd like to move, can someone please move the meeting into confidential under section 2751C of Local Government Regulations 2012. The reason being is that the confidential attachment includes information that is commercial in confidence. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. We will now move into confidential and the recording will stop. Thank you for your indulgence, gallery. We'll try to make it as quick as we can. Welcome back to the gallery. The recording has now recommenced. The councillors have shocked and amazed both the staff and myself at how happily they were to accept the recommendations and move back out into open meeting. Councillors, you have a recommendation on the board that would replace the suburb by suburb curbside clean-up service with an on-demand curbside clean-up service commencing from the beginning of the next financial year. Would someone like to move that recommendation? That has been moved by Councillor Bradley. That has been seconded by Councillor Murphy. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been lost. Councillor Power, were you abstaining or against? Against. Councillor Lane? Against. Councillor Russell?
For.
For, sorry. Councillor Karansky?
For.
Hall?
Against.
Fraser?
Against.
Jeremiah?
Against.
Bannon?
Against.
Stamp?
Against.
And Councillor Murphy was for, and I was against. Councillors, there will be an alternative recommendation put on the board shortly that will recommend that we maintain the business as usual approach for curbside clean-up that everybody knows and loves. Do you have one ready? You don't have one ready. Do you just want to receive the report? Can they just receive the report and continue, or do they need to endorse the status quo?
I'd like to endorse the status quo. In the actual report, there is
a second option in the report.
Conclusion.
Yep. Please stand by.
Page 26. Confidential.
The wording you're looking for will be on page 26 of the report. Sorry. No, it's okay. Kate is feeling the pressure, so if you could all keep yourselves entertained for 2 minutes, that'd be great. He's got it. I'm getting another coffee. Thank you, councillors. You have the status quo recommendation on the board that the suburb by suburb scheduled curbside clean-up service format continues from the beginning of the next financial year. Can I please have someone move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Would someone like to second it? Thank you, Councillor Bannon. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That was got to be the quickest curbside clean-up vote that I've ever had in my life. I'm very impressed. We will now move on to GB from the manager. Do you have any GB for us, Michael?
No, Mr. Chair.
Councillors, do you have any GB for the Health, Environment and Waste Manager? No? Michael, could you please, Trevor left, but could you please pass on my gratitude for his excellent comms whenever I need a response to a resident's question about environmental matters? They are on point. Yeah. Please give him my compliments and regards.
Done, will do.
Councillors, we'll now move on to item 4.1 of the agenda, which is the preliminary approval for the material change used to vary the effect of the Logan Planning Scheme 2015. I'll ask the Manager of Development Assessment, Stephen Ball, to come to the table so he can discuss his report. Before we enter discussion, do any councillors have a conflict of interest they'd like to declare? There being none, I will hand over to Stephen.
Through the chair, we have a development application for a variation request on Beanley Road, in Underwood. It is the former Australia Post site. They finished operations last year. What's important to know is that a variation request does not permit construction to occur, so there will need to be subsequent applications over the property. The proposal includes 3 different stages to the development. So the first one is the capacity for a new tavern with short-term accommodation, along with a medical hub, being a healthcare centre, food and drink outlet, chemist and cafe, along with the ability to find an alternative tenant for the existing warehousing towards the rear of the property. Stage 2 looks to demolish that warehousing activity and enable the construction of multiple dwellings. The third stage is the ability to construct a retirement or residential care type facility, once again towards the rear of the property. So, given that the purpose of the specialised centre zone is to complement existing centres, being the one adjacent to the property, it's considered that these activities well complement that centre, and it is because of that that officers are recommending approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Lane, you had a question?
I actually had a recommendation that was being put forward on this.
A proposed amendment to the recommendation?
That's correct. So if I can just take a moment to speak to it. The Old Australia Post site was placed there. It was a great commercial entity. It had specialised lights leading from it, but what it did was it caused 3 sets of lights within 75 metres and 2 sets of lights within 25 metres. Now, for residents coming down Beanley Road, this actually caused a lot of angst, a lot of uncertainty when they're turning into commercial businesses such as Big W and going for their basic food shopping. There's a heavily residential space across the road. Again, there's 2 sets of lights converging. People were moving into the wrong lanes, and it was my intention, after speaking to local residents, to try and have those lights removed. Now, this amendment actually seeks to look at the opportunity for a left out only out of this Australia Post site, and it's basically floating it to the developers of that site that that's our intention going forward. The development group have actually looked at an alternate exit for the development as well, and are working with them and other associated businesses around the area to try and improve the outcomes there. I just think for the purpose of this, if you could please support it, it would actually go a long way towards residents feeling a lot more secure about that intersection in the future. There were a number of applications made or objections to the development of that site, and 99% of them were around those lights and the frequency and the basic unsafe conditions that drivers put themselves into. Let me be really clear, the traffic lights themselves aren't dangerous. The drivers' behaviours with those traffic lights are dangerous, and we need to address that through taking them out in the future. So, yep.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. I'm just bringing up the aerial photography so for councillors' benefit, so they can have a look at the intersection while they contemplate the amendment. Councillor Bradley, if you'd like to ask your question in the meantime.
My question is in relation to the actual road, because I've recently forwarded a concern of a constituent from Division 1 to the state member in relation to the road, which I believe is TMR Road, Beanley Road. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Logan Road is a state-controlled road.
Not Logan Road, the old Beanley Road. And my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, it is only 1 lane, is that correct?
No, it splits into 2 lanes as it hits. So basically you come down the hill on a single lane road. You can see the first Can you do the pointer? So at the first set of lights, that's the second set of lights. So the first set of lights are to the left.
Can you go a little bit more the other way, please, away from the lights? So the concern that the constituent had was in relation to the one lane and how it needs to be two, because you go from 2 lanes as you're heading from Currabee, I think.
Further down.
Yeah, and you go into 1 lane. So that's the concern, as lots of accidents happening there, and that's what I have relayed on to the state member.
Sorry, can I speak, Mr. Chair?
You may.
So the problem is there are a lot of accidents that do occur at that site, but they're actually not claimed accidents. So they don't go into the statistics for that road. You can see the first intersection where there's a truck about to turn in. That was specifically built for Australia Post, and then less than 3-4 car lengths down the road, there's a right-hand turn, another right-hand turn, and then just further down the road, there is another right-hand turn. So you've got 3 sets of consecutive lights in a very short space of metres, and people get confused. It's a high-called community, so again, there are some shortfalls with people's capacity to understand what the lines mean, and so local residents are really are afraid of those lights.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Stephen would like to respond.
Through the chair, I just thought I would talk just a little bit more about the intersection that has been raised. So officers have been working with Councillor Lane to talk about the concerns that have been raised by the community. So as part of the application process, a traffic assessment was submitted with the development application. That was assessed by Council's traffic experts, and through that process it was not found that the intersection in its current form would be problematic. That being said, as part of, as I mentioned before, this is a variation request, so it doesn't permit construction to occur. So as part of the stage 1 works, being the medical centre component at the front, the current approval is proposed to allow for the intersection to remain in its current form. And then as subsequent stages come along, the obligation would be to again do those traffic assessments at the time, because there could be some time between bringing on different activities on the site. One of the other things that's really important to note is that if you look on figure 1 of your agendas, actually it might be easy just for me to show you on the... So to the rear of the property in this location where the cursor is, what you can see is there's an easement that goes from Kingston Road along that road there right to the back of the property. So as part of stage 2, there's an obligation in the conditions of approval for them to form a secondary access to that point, which will allow people to exit the site. It's not possible at this stage because that existing warehousing is continuing at the moment. It is able to continue, so they could find an alternative tenant. So that's how we've constructed the approval. As I said, that's been a traffic impact assessment has been submitted. I just wanted to clarify that because in your agenda you'll see that there's a concept plan. I think it's figure 10, and it shows that there's a cul-de-sac within it. But as I said before, this is a variation request, so it's varying what you can do under that zone on that particular site. It's not permitting construction to occur, so the conditions then obligate them to form that secondary access.
Thank you, Stephen. Next I have Councillor Kerensky.
Thank you. Actually, Stephen went a long way toward answering my questions. So I appreciate the Divisional Councillor providing us with some context around this particular issue. So if Council approves the recommendation today, the applicant is in no way under any pressure to remove that left in at the traffic lights. There's no reason for them to do that. They're not compelled to do that.
Through the chair, just to clarify, so as part of the stage one works, there is no proposed. There are some changes to it, being the lane that comes into Dom to lengthen it, which may resolve some of the challenges. So it extends it to 80 metres. So it's fairly significant works that they're doing. But in answer to your question, it would only be as part of stage 2 that they would then revisit whether those lights need to be removed, and noting the fact that the warehousing activity is disappearing, the need for that, for the traffic light facility, given the size of the vehicles that will be exiting the property, being able to have a left-out only component with a U-turn further up Beanley Road to the west. It might very well be that's removed, but I can't say that that's what the traffic impact assessment will find as part of stage 2. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I just wanted to be clear that we've talked a bit about the access on and off the site, but really this report isn't about that today, and we may well be very limited by what degree we can impact that ultimately anyway. It's according to our traffic assessments in future, and we can't forecast what that may or may not be. So today's recommendation, if we support this, effectively in a nutshell, what are we supporting?
We're supporting changes to essentially the zoning of the site. So as I was articulating before, there are a range of activities that aren't code accessible with that specialised centre zone, but what's really important for a specialised centre zone is to complement the existing centre. So the idea within that community of having a medical centre with some short-term accommodation, it's officers' belief that that is really important to the community, so making that code accessible is important. One of the other elements is that apartments are the code accessible use, so apartments for a residential component. This looks to vary that and allow for townhouses. Now, given that there is a low density, there is a detached housing to the west and the south of the development, the change from apartments to townhouse on the site we believe is acceptable, particularly recognising that in a specialised centre zone you can construct up to 30 metres in height, but where you're within 15 minutes, so where you're adjacent to a low density residential zone, which is to the west and to the south, you're required to drop down to 8.5. So realistically, we probably would have ended up with that outcome, and realistically apartments, townhouses with that kind of height, there isn't really too much of a difference. So it is a good transition from that detached housing into the site. So we don't see that as a major concern, changing that within the provisions.
And the majority of the objections have come from adjacent landowners. I wonder if you might talk to those objections, please.
Sure. Within the report, in the exec summary, we've summarised what those objections are. So they've talked about the issue around the traffic. So Councillor Lane is correct. There were 11 submissions, so that has come up. There's some questions around the built form. In terms of the built form, this is a variation request. It doesn't look to allow for instance, additional height or to make any changes to that. So the built form we'll get to have another look at when they make those applications. Talked about amenity. Once again, things around amenity that will be addressed by when we look at the future detailed applications where we see things like built form and overlooking, so need for screening, etc., etc. The question around density, that's really just a relitigation of the idea that you could potentially have apartments over the site. That's allowable anyway on the site, so it's not something that we're allowing. Outdoor recreation spaces, once again, there's no changes being proposed to that, so it's in accordance with the planning scheme. We'll look at that as part of any future applications. Things like the construction nuisances, stormwater runoff, all those would be looked at as part of any future detailed application, including the retaining walls. And then some questions around fencing. Once again, that would be looked at as part of those future applications. A lot of things around, and as I said before, if you look at figure 10 within your agenda, I can completely understand, because we ask for a concept, so we get a bit of a feel for what they're after. But equally, when we get concept plans as part of variation requests, we normally get these kind of concerns because they look at that and they go, I don't like that. And it is difficult to explain that we don't just get an approval in and we approve buildings, we sometimes approve variations, you know. So it's not surprising that we've received those objections, but as Councillor Lane articulated, a lot of the concerns were in regards to traffic in that intersection. Just mentioning that traffic intersection, just a little bit more detail. The Australia Post approval over the site, when it was given by the federal government. So back in that time, it was an approval issued by council. So this situation with the intersection was established in order to allow the warehousing, B-doubles, you know, those sort of activities leaving the site to get out onto the road, because they can't just go up Beanley Road and do a U-turn because of their size. That wasn't a situation that's been introduced through a council approval. But as I said, traffic impact assessment has been submitted. That's been reviewed by our technical experts, and they've found that it not to be a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Kransky. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me have another go. I'm not sure, Stephen, that you answered my concerns about the one lane.
Sure.
Coming down the hill along Old Beanley Road. I know you did say about the traffic, but you didn't actually specifically address my concerns about the one lane.
Sure. Just to be clear, Councillor, in terms of the one lane, are you concerned that with the turning lane, sorry, I'm just trying to understand what the concern is.
As I expressed, I have already, prior to even receiving this notice of this application, had constituents concerned that that needs to be 2 lanes, that road already. And when I was previously the councillor on the other side of Logan Road, I'd had a lot of people saying exactly the same thing. So there's already an element of community angst about that road needing to be 2 lanes. It's not a council-controlled road. It's, from my understanding, it's TMR, and that's what I would like, some sort of assurance or some sort of or feedback that will be passed on to TMR that road needs to be upgraded.
Councillor Bradley, the best way to get that to TMR is for you to write to them.
Yeah, like I said, I have, but I would, in this process, we're going through an application process. I want somehow that, no, look, I understand that you're looking a bit funny at me,
It's because
Chair,
it's nothing to do with
but
this application.
I want the feedback. It hasn't, I haven't had it.
Yeah, sure.
And I raised it before and it hasn't been addressed.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. And that's, it isn't a state-controlled road. It is actually, that's a Beanley Road's a council road. Yep, that's correct.
So, raise it with you.
So what I'll do is I'm happy to take that away, and I'll come back to you with some information after consulting with my colleagues, because I know they're aware of some of the concerns, particularly that have been raised by Councillor Lane in relation to this. They've potentially been gathering information together to give to Councillor Lane on the matter. I'm not the chair of that. I'm not the manager of that particular branch, so I don't want to cut across any work or information they've been doing through that. So, but I'll make sure that we get you that information. Okay, is that possible?
It's definitely a council road, you're saying? Definitely.
Chair, that's correct, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Are there any further questions? Is everyone clear on, sorry, Councillor Bannon?
Just the Councillor Lane's amendment has been put through, so that's what we're voting on?
Yeah, so at the moment, Councillor Lane's amended motion is what's before the committee. Stephen, could you just briefly explain the difference between your original motion and the amended motion, just so that councillors are clear on how it varies from what you put forward?
Through the chair, what this will essentially mean is, instead of, as part of stage 2, officers having another look at whether the intersection being the signals should be there, what this is saying that you will, as part of any stage of the development, remove those signals, have a left out facility, and what that will mean is you will then travel up to further to the west of the site, and there will be a U-turn facility further up. That's what's looking to be introduced as part of this amendment.
Thank you, but as it currently stands, because this is just a variation approval, they would still be able to, like, that set of lights will stay there until they move on to the next stage of their development, and then they would probably either accept that condition or challenge it through.
Yeah, through the chair, they could find an alternative tenant for the for the existing buildings on the site and not implement their approval and continue on with what they're doing under their existing approval. But as soon as they look to commence this new use, being the medical centre, then that would bring on the requirement to remove the signals.
Okay. Councillors, are you clear about the differentiation there? So essentially, as long as this remains as it is, untouched with its current approval, that set of lights will not be under any pressure to change whatsoever. If this amendment means that if they go for an approval to change it to the medical centre use, which means you shouldn't see those heavy vehicles coming through anymore, then they would be compelled to remove the lights and become left in, left out only, noting that they can challenge this through appeal if they feel that it's unreasonable. Are we all clear on that? I'm seeing nodding heads. Councillor Kerensky.
And I just wanted to ask Stephen, and are council officers happy to support the amendment?
Through the chair, we've received a traffic impact assessment as part of the development application. We've looked to have that assessed by our technical experts, and they've indicated that the current arrangement is satisfactory. I will say that it is possible for the applicant to challenge that decision. They may very well challenge that specific condition because they could see that as undermining their ability to tenant the warehousing to the rear, and they would be able to, for instance, submit a change application to try and remove that particular condition. Could be their first step, or equally they could go straight to appealing the decision. And yeah, we would go through the normal process of mediations and things like that before entering a formal proceeding.
And if the decision was to be appealed, and bearing in mind we're talking about this in public at the moment, what would council's position be, do you think? Would we be in a strong position?
Through the chair, we wouldn't discuss prospects advice unless we were in confidential.
Understood.
Thank you, Councillor Kerensky. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, I do have concerns going against council officers' recommendations. There's an element of risk, and I do empathise with Councillor Lane's position. I won't be voting for the amendment purely on that. It's not something that I support, going against council officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Are there any further questions before I put the motion to the floor? Mayor Power.
I'd just like to ask you a question. Did you know about this change before you came in?
Through the chair, yes, I did. As you know, through any committee process, we speak to the divisional councillor about the application to make sure they understand the recommendations that officers are putting forward, and then we also ensure that we also check the recommendations that councillors want to put forward to make sure that they're not putting something forward that is erroneous and they can't actually put forward. So all conditions need to be reasonable and relevant.
Okay.
So we do check those things.
So what I'm asking the question is the change, other than inconvenient for the developer, is it fine in compliance with traffic standards, and you would have checked it out with a traffic engineer's report or some sort of indication from a traffic engineer that it would be fine?
Through the chair, it's certainly not an unlawful condition.
Okay.
The question of whether it's reasonable or relevant is will ultimately come down to the court's decision if they appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Power. Councillor Bannon.
I just want to commend Councillor Lane on, obviously sometimes the officers or whoever decides doesn't think it's the right thing, but she's done this because that's what the residents wanted to do and that's a job. So I fully support Councillor Lane and happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Bannon. I'll give Councillor Lane the opportunity to move it if she'd like to, as it is her amendment.
I'm happy to move it, and if Councillor Bannon
Councillor Bannon will second it.
Great.
So we have a mover from Councillor Lane, seconded from Councillor Bannon. Can I see anyone's support through show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is carried 10 in favour, with Councillor Bradley.
Against, please.
And Councillor Hall. Councillor Kerensky.
Against, please.
Thank you very much, councillors. I've now moved on to general business for the Development Assessment Manager. Stephen, do you have any general business for us?
Through the chair, no, I don't.
Councillors, do you have any general business for Stephen?
Yes. Oh, no, sorry.
No, that's not for
economic,
Stephen.
sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. There being no further general business, thank you, Stephen. I'll let you get back to work, and we'll move on to item 5.1, and I'll call the Economic Development and Strategy Manager, David Radich.
Conflict of interest, perceived conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. I'll call the Economic Development and Strategy Manager, Dave Radich, to the front, and while we do that, I'll ask if any councillors have any conflicts of interest in item 5.1, and I understand that Councillor Bradley does.
Thank you.
While Councillor Bradley finds the paperwork, does anyone else have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare on this matter? No? Excellent. Ready when you are, Councillor.
Thank you. I, Councillor Lisa Bradley, wish to declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 5.1 of the City Planning and Economic Development and Environment Committee due to the following reason. The report refers to Beanley Town Square on page 104 of the report. Oh, I've just lost my notes, sorry. Just waiting for that to open up. And the name of the person, Beanley Town Square. My partner takes bookings for Beanley Town Square. His name is Michael Matthews. I have determined that the personal interest is not of sufficient significance that will lead me to making a decision that is contrary to the public interest. I'll best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole council's area by participating in discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillors, Councillor Bradley has declared a perceived conflict of interest. You must now determine if she has a conflict of interest and whether or not she may remain in the room to participate in the debate. On the screen you have a motion to determine that Councillor Bradley has a perceived conflict of interest. Would anyone like to move that motion? There being no mover, that motion has failed. On the screen now you have a motion to determine that Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest. Would anyone like to move that motion? There being no mover, that conflict has failed. You now have on the screen a motion that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. Would anyone like to move that motion? Thank you, Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Murphy. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. You must now provide a reason for why you have determined that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest and therefore can stay in the room to participate in the debate. Councillor Mayor Power would like to provide a reason.
Oh, why not? Just that the recommendation is only requesting a report to be made. No other decision is to be made. No ongoing decision other than what's already previously happened.
Thank you, Mayor Power. Without further ado, I will hand over to the manager, Dave Radich, to speak to his report.
Through the chair, so I'll Tate Ryan, the program leader of Place Management and Economic Development, will speak to this report. Broadly, I'll just speak to why you're seeing an economic development annual report in front of you, noting that a lot of the councillors would have never seen this annual report before. So under the current economic development strategy that's going to run out in 2021, we have a set of KPIs that are associated with it. So it's how we measure our performance as an organisation to meet targets. So this report will speak to what we have done to meet those targets, and I'll let Tate speak in detail about that.
Thank you. Through the chair. Pleased at this opportunity. It's really a good chance for my team and program to be able to reflect on the year that has been. So appreciate the time here today to review the report. Although it's been a challenging year, it is one that I'm extremely proud of what the program has been able to deliver. The action plans for local connections, global connections, industry development, investment attraction, and the destination management plan were successfully implemented. These activities have continued to support the attraction of new investment into the city, as well as resilience and sustainability of existing businesses in Logan. I'll only mention a few of the highlights referred to in the report. So a total of investment of $96 million was attracted into the city, creating 452 jobs across 14 investment projects. The total economic impacts, direct and indirect, are estimated to contribute a further 176 million in total economic output, 63 million in additional value added output, and an additional 444 local jobs. So in addition to that core metric, 2,114 businesses were directly contacted and provided assistance as part of Council's initial response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also led a number of additional activities in conjunction with the local recovery economic subgroup. We extensively promoted a business case for health and medical investment locally, nationally, and to invest into international markets, with a focus on attracting specific investment and health services into the city of Logan. The business case has been used to showcase the opportunities throughout the city, and we've seen real success recently with developments in Meadowbrook as a future health and medical hub for southeast Queensland. In addition, a business case for a whitewater park facility was developed and provided to Queensland. This site identified would allow the establishment of an outdoor adventure park that would also be suitable for non-water activities and nature-based experiences that will be on further discussion with state government. So I'll stop on the key highlights there, as there's probably too much to go through with the time that we have. However, we have also commenced the consultation for the city's new economic development vision strategy that you all have participated in the second phase. And we will continue to develop that, and we will look forward to the emerging outcomes from that work as to how we continue to deliver work in the economic space moving forward. So I'll bring my review to a close there and throw to any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Tate. Councillors, do you have any questions on the annual report? Yes, Councillor Bradley.
Nothing major, but the mountain biking event on page 103 of the report, can you just check the spelling? Neville Lowry Reserve is incorrect, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Are there any further questions? There being none, can I please have someone move the report? Thank you, Councillor Karansky, seconded by Councillor Stemp. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Great work, Tate and Dave. Appreciate it very much. And I know the work that you've done over the last 4 years has set us up for some great opportunities, both in especially in the private health space, and that we've got great things coming in the next few years. Next, we'll move on to item 5.2, which is the Food Tourism Development Plan for 2020 to 2025. Would any councillors like to declare a conflict of interest before I move into discussion? There being none, other than an ongoing love for food, I'll pass over to Dave Radich and Tate to speak to their report.
Thank you. Through the chair. In 2016, Logan was one of 5 local government areas that participated in a culinary tourism pilot project facilitated by Tourism Events Queensland. At the time, this project confirmed the opportunity to develop cultural diverse food experiences in the city that would add value to the Queensland food tourism agenda. During the development of Council's Destination Management Plan, consultation once again confirmed food tourism as a key development theme and opportunity for the City of Logan. This report introduces the Logan Food Tourism Development Plan 2020 to 25, developed in partnership with experienced food and agri-tourism specialists, Regionality, following consultation workshops with key internal and external stakeholders. The plan provides the framework to develop the city's food tourism experience offering and grow the visitor economy while enhancing the lifestyle and livability of the city. The plan has set an ambitious aim to establish Logan as Queensland multicultural food capital by 2025 and sets out a framework and a whole of Council's strategic action plan to achieve this. Finally, this report seeks Council's support for the plan and our progression to work with our partners towards implementation. Although responsibility for business and industry sector development lies with the ED team, collaboration to develop an implementation plan and co-delivery of this plan across Council will be essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Tate. Councillors, do you have any questions on this report? No, I would encourage you though, if you do see any opportunities for food tourism, that you put them in contact with Dave's team, because that way the council can support them and encourage them to establish themselves and overcome some of those initial hurdles. Would someone like to move the acceptance of this report? Thank you, Councillor Bannon. Seconded by Councillor Lane. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. Great work, Tate. Next, we have item 5.3, which is a confidential report regarding the Park Ridge Economic Corridor boundary. Before I move into confidential, would any councillors like to declare a conflict of interest on this item? There being none, could I please ask that someone move the meeting into confidential under section 2751G and H of Local Government Regulations 2012. This report is considered confidential because the endorsement of the report includes information that is commercial in confidence and involves a future planning scheme amendment process. Councillor Bradley has moved us into confidential. Can I have someone to second us? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I just had a mental breakdown for a second. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. The recording will now cease, and I apologise to the gallery, but you must leave the room so we can discuss the confidential matter. Thank you, councillors, and welcome back to the gallery and the audience at home. You have a recommendation on the board. Would someone like to move that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Harrimeyer. Seconded by Councillor Lane. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. That has been carried unanimously. Councillors, that is the end of the reports for the Economic Development Manager. Dave, do you have any GB for us?
No.
We do have a GB item for Councillor Bradley for the Economic Development Manager and others. I'll just get that up on the board. The motion that Councillor Bradley has put to the committee, the general business motion, is that the Economic Development and Strategy Manager, in consultation with the Community Services Manager and the Parks Manager, be requested to prepare a report to a future Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting outlining funding and delivery options to develop the Springwood Town Square and associated community infrastructure. Councillor Bradley, would you like to speak to your general business?
Thank you. As I've expressed to other councillors before, at the moment I'm lobbying state candidates. I understand that there's a short period of time between now and when the state election is on, so I understand that this probably wouldn't get up. However, I mean, as in won't be reported back in that time period, but I would like to see it done sometime this year, because the town square has been on the local area plan since 2009. And I can't talk about confidential things, obviously, about the time frame, but there needs to be I would have expected when I came back as a councillor that there would have been something, a report at the very least about its progress, where it's up to, when it's being delivered. However, there has been nothing. So hence why I would like to see this progressed in terms of in the alignment of when it was supposed to be delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. I understand staff have been working with you to provide the information that they have so far, but you're still seeking more. Do any councillors have any questions for Councillor Bradley regarding
Can I just
general
correct that?
business
I'm
motion?
not seeking more. I'm seeking what is supposed to be, because there has been no reports, I said.
Thank you. But you are seeking progress on the matter?
Yes.
Yep. So you're seeking more than information?
No. I'm seeking the progress of what it should have been, because nothing has happened whilst administration, etc.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if this report will achieve that, but I hope it does, because that's what you're aiming for it to do. And I'm grateful that you're not trying to squeeze it in before the state election, because it would have been very difficult to return a report with this much detail and of the scope that you're asking for in time for the end of October. Councillors, do you have any further questions for Councillor Bradley regarding this report? Is someone happy to move the report? I assume Councillor Bradley would like to.
Thank you.
Would someone like to second this report? Thank you, Councillor Bannon. All those raise your hand, show favour by raising your hand. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, there's no further reports for this committee. Thank you very much for your patience. I understand it has been a long committee, and we will commence the City Lifestyle Committee in 10 minutes.